Stefano Ammo crosses the start-finish line at the end of his outlap. As David Zahn completes the outlap, he will be hoping there is enough space on track to fully attack on the flying lap. Simon of the Desert has completed his first flying lap in 1:17.276. Kevin Lekmansky completes that lap in his ASRL Radical SR3 XXR, putting him in P1. David Zahn will be happy, with a time good enough for second in this qualifying session.
Every fraction of a second counts. He is surely working on that 0.331 gap to pole.
Simon of the Desert will be happy, with a time good enough for third in this qualifying session.
It may be difficult for him to find that missing 0.558, but that won't stop him from trying.
Kevin Lekmansky is currently on provisional pole, with a time of 1:15.924. David Zahn will be happy, with a time good enough for second in this qualifying session.
Every fraction of a second counts. He is surely working on that 0.52 gap to pole.
David Zahn will be happy, with a time good enough for second in this qualifying session.
It may be difficult for him to find that missing 0.497, but that won't stop him from trying.
Sketty will be happy, with a time good enough for fourth in this qualifying session.
Every fraction of a second counts. He is surely working on that 2.166 gap to pole.
Sketty will be happy, with a time good enough for 4th in this qualifying session. Sketty will be happy, with a time good enough for 4th in this qualifying session.
Every fraction of a second counts. He is surely working on that 1.781 gap to pole. It may be difficult for him to find that missing 1.781, but that won't stop him from trying.
Sketty will be happy, with a time good enough for 4th in this qualifying session.
It may be difficult for him to find that missing 1.74, but that won't stop him from trying.
Stefano Amodei will be happy, with a time good enough for 5th in this qualifying session. Kevin Lekmanski will be feeling confident starting from pole position.
He can't get cocky. This is ASRL, and anything can happen.
Starting on the front row gives David Zahn the best possible chance at challenging for the lead.
He can't count his chickens before they've hatched. There is a long way to go.
The 3rd position belongs to Simon of the Desert.
Big things expected for Simon today.
Watch out for Sketty, starting from the 4th grid position in today's race.
Starting from here, Sketty may already have expectations of a podium finish.
As the drivers prepare to take off, Stefano Amodei sits in 5th place on the starting grid.
A strong grid position, and he'll be expecting a solid result today.
lights are off. It's pedal to the metal time.
With adrenaline running high, some drivers may take unnecessary risks. Staying patient and knowing when to make a move is essential for a strong start.
Kevin Lekmansky will be studying the nearby drivers and looking for anything that could give them an advantage.
It all comes down to this how, where the rubber meets the road. There's no more time for talk, no more practice. The teams have done all they can, now it comes down to Lekmansky to bring it home.
The drivers are jockeying for position. Simon of the Desert will be looking to get off to a good start and consolidate his position.
With this motley bunch of drivers there is bound to be drama. I just hope we don't miss it.
There's some intense battling throughout the field as everyone is feeling out the drivers around them.
Like gladiators they enter hell, but instead of lions and swords our champions fight in an arena of tarmac, and with fire-breathing machines of cutting-edge materials, designed to explore the very limits of physics itself in what can sometimes be very much a fight to the death.
Settling into a rhythm is going to be crucial.
The drivers are walking a fine line during the first lap melee as everyone tries to establish themselves. It's easy for inexperienced racers to blow it in T1.
The tensions are high, and no one will want to make a crucial mistake on the first lap. It's been a solid race so far for Simon of the Desert. He's holding his position and keeping a steady pace. In racing anything can, and usually does, happen, especially in such an epic showdown.
As a former driver, I can tell you there's nothing quite like the adrenaline rush when you're this close to your rival, ready to make your move.
Sketty is giving it his all chasing down David Zahn in P2. It's a solid performance from Sketty at the moment. He's holding his position and not getting too caught up in battles around him. Every move counts now as David Zahn works to reel in Kevin Lekmansky and overtake for P1.
It's a fine line between pushing the car to its limits and losing control. Zahn is really walking that fine line.
Sketty is pushing really hard, but as we know pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a razor's edge between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that sweet spot where we're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play.
Breaking news, folks. Fantastic move from Sketty, who has just gained a position.
I would not be surprised to see him get this pass completed soon.
The action is heating up here as David Zahn is in first, defending from Simon of the Desert, who is only 0.4 seconds away.
That's right, David is showing some great form and it looks like Simon won't be able to catch up, barring any mistakes.
Oh, this is getting intense. Simon of the Desert is just a few car lengths behind David Zahn. Simon of the Desert is on a charge. His split time shows he's upped his pace. Stefano Amode is trying to catch up to Simon of the Desert. The gap is slowly closing, but time is running out. Situations like these often lead to a dramatic finish.
This is where experience comes into play. Simon has been in this situation before and knows how to defend for position, but Stefano is hungry for success and won't give up easily.
The drivers are getting faster as they settle into their cars and get used to the conditions, with Stefano Amode just putting in his best lap so far with a 1 minute.
He certainly looked to be in the flow, but may have to improve further to hold on to third. Simon of the Desert is looking for a way to close that gap to David Zahn. It seems like Simon of the Desert is struggling. His last lap time was a bit off the pace of David Zahn. Hopefully Simon can find some of that missing time and get it back.
The pursuit is on. Simon of the Desert is working on that gap to David Zahn, determined to claim P1.
Simon needs to focus to make up that gap to Zahn.
The gap between David Zahn and Simon of the Desert is not insurmountable, but it's going to take a mistake from David Zahn to bring Simon of the Desert into play.
That's right, and Simon knows to keep pushing hard and driving his own race. He can't let Dave off the hook.
This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Simon of the Desert is chasing David Zahn in P1.
It's a game of strategy now as Simon hunts down Dave. Yes, it's all about choosing the right moments to push and when to conserve energy, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike.
It's not going to plan for Simon of the Desert, who is trailing behind David Zahn and the gap is widening. He may not have an answer for this right now. Kevin Lekmansky has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with Sketty. I expect his only hope at this point is that Sketty makes an error.
Anything can happen yet, and it usually does. I've certainly seen drivers come back from worse.
It's not looking good for Kevin Lekmansky, who is still behind Sketty and the gap is increasing. Things don't seem to be going Simon of the Desert's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here.
Simon certainly isn't going to be close enough to mount any kind of challenge soon unless it's down to a mistake from Zahn.
It's game on now. Simon of the Desert has closed the gap to David Zahn. It's now down to 0.6 seconds.
This is what racing is all about. Hard-fought battles with as much determination as respect, between friends and enemies alike.
Looks like we've had a few incidents out there.
Someone forgot to take their driving lessons. They're making more U-turns than a confused tourist.
Hilarious. I think they might need to call their GPS for directions. Maybe it can help them navigate the track. It may seem like Simon of the Desert is far behind, but David Zahn can't afford to let his guard down. One mistake could give Simon of the Desert an opening to catch up.
That's very true, and Simon knows that as well. He's got to drive his own race and wait for Zahn to make a mistake to have any chance of overtaking.
David Zahn could be on a charge here. Ada. He's just put in a quicker lap than Simon of the Desert.
As long as Dave can maintain that consistency and pace, it will be interesting to see.
As we enjoy seeing these titans of the track battle it out, let's not forget about the pit crews. Those guys and girls are like a well-oiled machine themselves.
Absolutely, they're the unsung heroes of the racing world. But you know what they say, behind every great driver is an even greater pit crew.
Oh, this is getting intense. Simon of the Desert needs to keep David Zahn in his sights. The tension is building as Kevin Lekmansky trails behind Sketty. The gap is slowly but surely decreasing, and the pressure is mounting. Hold on a second. Now I may be wrong here, but I'm not sure that's the racing mode.
This is going to be a battle to the very end, with Kevin in P5 doing everything he can to catch up.
This is where the race gets really interesting. Simon of the Desert is closing in on Sketty. It's looking good for Stefano Amodi, sitting in second.
Yes, but Stefano has to keep his focus and drive with intensity. There's still a long way to go in this race.
Stefano Amodi has just put in a faster lap than Sketty, so that's going to give him something to worry about. This is a thrilling battle as Simon of the Desert edges closer to Sketty in their fight for P3. The gap between Simon of the Desert and Sketty is growing. It's now up to 1.0 seconds. If everything goes as planned, this is going to be a race for the ages.
The drivers are executing their strategies to perfection, making the most of every opportunity. This is what top-level racing is all about.
Hold on a moment. That won't be ideal for Stefano Amodi. The delta between Simon of the Desert and third and Sketty remains over a second, but Simon of the Desert is not letting up.
It's moments like these that make motorsports so exciting. It should be an interesting battle to watch as long as Simon can close that gap.
It looks like Simon of the Desert is making a move. The gap to Sketty is now down to 1.0 seconds.
That's a great effort from Simon. He'll need to keep up the pressure and see if he can make a move.
It doesn't seem like things are going to plan for Simon of the Desert as there is a big gap ahead.
Every race adds to a driver's experience, both good and bad. It just highlights that Simon is going to have to get more serious with practice to not get outclassed on the circuit.
It looks like Kevin Lekmansky is pushing hard to catch up to Simon of the Desert. Kevin Lekmansky is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Simon of the Desert to 2.5 seconds.
This is where the race gets really exciting. Both drivers will be pushing to the limit to gain the advantage.
Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled from being pushed for every last bit of speed. Hold that thought. Superb driving from Simon of the Desert, who with that overtake has gained a position in the race.
The gap between them is now just over 0.5 seconds.
That's not a small gap, but Stefano Amodei has what it takes to challenge for the position.
Indeed, the anticipation is high as Stefano tries to reel in Lekmansky.
The gap between Stefano Amodei and Kevin Lekmansky is getting smaller. It's a game of cat and mouse out there, with Stefano Amodei trying to find the perfect opportunity to make a move on Kevin Lekmansky. The gap is over a second, but every fraction counts.
Lekmansky is not making it easy, maintaining a consistent pace.
Well, it doesn't look like Sketty is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone Simon of the Desert. The gap between Sketty and Simon of the Desert is widening. It's now up to 2.6 seconds.
This is where the mental toughness of Sketty comes into play. He'll need to stay focused and keep pushing, even when things aren't going his way.
A solid performance from Simon of the Desert, who is holding down second. Excellent work from Simon of the Desert, who has managed to increase his lead over Sketty. It's all about consistency for Simon of the Desert, who is currently second.
That's right, Simon can't afford to make any mistakes or let up. Every point counts in this championship.
David Zahn is placed first at the moment.
Definitely how, but David can't afford to get complacent. This race is going to require focus and intensity.
He's pulling away. David Zahn is increasing the gap to Simon of the Desert. Sketty has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with Simon of the Desert. I expect his only hope at this point is that Simon makes an error. It seems like Sketty is struggling and not able to maintain his pace. Things don't seem to be going Sketty's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here.
Anything can happen yet, and it usually does. I've certainly seen drivers come back from worse.
Stefano Amodei will need to stay focused and keep pushing, even when the gap seems insurmountable. It's not over until the checkered flag drops.
It's going to be tough for Stefano, as Lech Mansky seems to have found his rhythm.
It's certainly not going to plan for Stefano Amodei right now, who is struggling to keep up with Kevin Lech Mansky. The pursuit is on. Kevin Lech Mansky is closing the gap on Sketty, determined to claim P3. Stop the press. A brilliant maneuver from Kevin Lech Mansky, who has just moved up the field.
This is not going to be an easy pass to make.
Hold that thought. Great driving from Sketty, who has just gained a place and moved up to third.
Amazing stuff. Focus and precision, what it's all about.
Wow, Sketty is really pushing hard to catch up to Kevin Lech Mansky. Breaking news, folks. Tough break for Sketty, who has just lost a position.
That's got to hurt. Sketty needs to get back on the line and minimize the damage. If Sketty gets any closer, he might as well ask Lech Mansky for a piggyback ride.
A strong showing from Simon of the Desert, who is currently second.
Definitely, but he can't get too comfortable. There are plenty of other drivers gunning for that position, and Simon has to keep pushing to stay on the pace.
A commanding performance from Simon of the Desert, who has increased his lead over Kevin Lech Mansky, putting him firmly in his rear-view mirrors. Breaking update. Look at this Ada, what a shame for Simon of the Desert. He's lost P2 to Kevin Lech Mansky, and that's got to hurt.
Indeed, he's been trying so hard to hold his position, but the other drivers are just too strong. Meanwhile, Lech Mansky is showing some great pace. That's a really strong performance from Simon. He's not giving Lech Mansky any chances to catch up.
A tough moment for Simon of the Desert, who has just lost a place, now in fourth.
Yes, but there's still plenty of race left. Simon needs to stay calm and focused, and make his move when the time is right.
Simon of the Desert is running fourth, and trying to catch Sketty. It's all eyes on this battle as Sketty in third tries to hold off the challenge of Simon of the Desert.
If Simon gets any closer to the back of Sketty, then one of them is gonna need some lube if they want to take this further.
Things are heating up as Simon of the Desert tries to close the gap to Sketty. It looks like we might get a battle between Simon of the Desert and Sketty.
Exactly what Simon needed. He can't afford to lose any more ground to Sketty.
Look at that, Simon of the Desert is hot on the tail of Sketty.
The gap between them is just over 0.5 seconds, which can feel like miles if you're trailing and not catching up.
It's looking good for David Zahn, sitting in first. Looks like Simon of the Desert is really pushing it to the limit. He's taking those curbs aggressively, but that can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer. It's all about maintaining that fine line between speed and control. This is where every inch counts. Simon is pushing hard to close the gap on Sketty. Absolutely, precision and control are key here. Knowing when to push and when to hold back can be the difference between winning and losing.
Simon of the Desert is trying his best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Sketty at the moment. We are used to seeing some hard-fought but clean racing here at ASRL. I'm expecting to see nothing different here today as this race unfolds. The race is heating up as Simon of the Desert in fourth closes in on Sketty.
We're witnessing a battle of skill and strategy between two great drivers, with Simon in fourth determined to catch up.
The gap is just over a second, and I'm sure Stefano Amodei is going to do everything possible to try and close the distance. He's not giving up without a fight. It's not going to plan for Stefano Amodei, who is trailing behind Simon of the Desert and the gap is widening. He may not have an answer for this right now. It doesn't seem like things are going to plan for Sketty as there is a big gap ahead.
Sketty certainly isn't going to be close enough to mount any kind of challenge soon unless it's down to a mistake from Lekmansky.
It's not looking good for Sketty, who is still behind Kevin Lekmansky, and the gap is increasing.
He needs to pick up the pace for sure, but that's not always a real possibility.
The gap between Kevin Lekmansky and Sketty is pretty substantial right now. It's probably going to take a mistake from Kevin to even allow Sketty to get a look in.
Every race adds to a driver's experience, both good and bad. It just highlights that Sketty is going to have to get more serious with practice to not get outclassed on the circuit.
A solid performance from David Zahn, who is holding down first. Some great driving from David Zahn, who has increased his lead over Kevin Lekmansky and is starting to put some distance between them.
It's really looking like Zahn is going to be tough to pass today. He's driving with real confidence and authority.
It's all about consistency for Kevin Lekmansky, who is currently second. Impressive driving from Kevin Lekmansky, who has managed to extend his lead over Sketty. It looks like Sketty will have to regroup and try to make up that lost ground. As a former driver, Ada, how did you manage the physical demands of racing?
It's all about preparation. How? Drivers undergo rigorous fitness training to build their strength, stamina, and flexibility. A proper diet and hydration plan is also essential to ensure peak performance on race day.
Kevin Lekmansky is placed second at the moment.
Absolutely, and he'll need to keep driving with determination to stay in that position.
Well, it doesn't look like Sketty is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone Kevin Lekmansky.
It's not over until the checkered flag drops, and it's important to maintain concentration until you've made it to the finish line.
The gap between Sketty and Kevin Lekmansky is growing. It's now up to 5.8 seconds. It's a classic case of chasing down the car ahead for Stefano Amodei, who is currently in P5.
Absolutely. Stefano in fifth will need to be patient and work carefully to reduce that gap without overdriving it, as he can't afford to take unnecessary risks and that might lead to an off or damaging their car.
Good news for Stefano Amodei, the gap to Simon of the Desert has decreased. It's now down to 4.5 seconds. It looks like David Zahn has found another gear in the last sector of the race.
He'll be the one celebrating at the finish line.
What a win! This is a historic moment for David Zahn, who put on a masterclass in driving today. What a display of skill and precision.
And that's why David is one of the best in the business. A dominant display of driving from start to finish, leaving the rest of the pack in the dust.
A nail-biting finish, but Kevin Lekmansky claims second place.
Intense race, but Lekmansky held his nerve and earned a great second place.
Impressive drive from Sketty to claim the final spot on the podium. Simon of the Desert claimed fourth. Finishing fifth is Stefano Amodei. Stefano Amode will be looking to convert his pole position into a win.
Stefano is sure to be excited at his prospects for this race.
Simon of the Desert will be looking to convert this front row start into a win.
He will have to be smart about his moves. He must not burn out too early.
Sketty lines up in third place as the engines rev and the race begins.
Sketty will be expecting to bring home solid points.
In fourth place, we have Kevin Lekmansky.
Another good start for the American driver.
Starting from the fifth position on the grid, we have David Zahn.
The American driver will be focused on a good result from here.
In the sixth position, it's none other than Crow.
It's not always easy to get the ASRL Radical State Route 3 XXR this high up the starting grid.
The green flag is out and the drivers are off. You know what, Ada? This is what it's all about.
The first lap can be chaotic, and avoiding any major incidents is key. Drivers need to be alert and ready to react to any sudden changes on the track.
As the tires come up to temp, their available grip is changing, and the drivers that manage this transition best are likely to make progress through the field. Every lap is an opportunity for Kevin Lekmansky to learn just a little bit more to shave a few tenths or hundredths off his times. As we watch the drivers fight it out in the first lap, I can already feel that this is going to be an epic race. As the drivers get this race underway, let me give a shout out to the admin team at ASRL for making this all possible. Heroes one and all. Is there a better sight than a field of elite racing drivers battling for position?
Let's hope everyone is able to stay focused for the challenge ahead.
All the drivers will be trying to take advantage of the path whilst they're still bunched up.
The race isn't won in the first turn, but there have been plenty that have ended there. How?
A setback for Sketty, who has just been passed.
Yes, but he can't give up. There's still plenty of time left in this race, and Sketty needs to stay focused and keep pushing.
The battle for P6 is heating up as Stefano Amode tries to catch tempo in P6.
Stefano is really pushing the limits. He's riding the curbs and hustling that ASRL Radical State Route 3 XXR like a boss.
Things are going according to plan for Crow, who is currently 5th. It looks like Stefano Amode is starting to catch up to Crow. The gap is now down to 1.0 seconds. Braking alert. It's true what they say, Ada, you're never completely useless.
Indeed, Hal, you can always be used as a bad example.
Kevin Lekmansky is on a mission, chasing David Zahn, who's currently got a comfortable lead. It's game on now. Kevin Lekmansky has closed the gap to David Zahn. It's now down to 0.6 seconds. The gap between David Zahn and Kevin Lekmansky may be wide, but that doesn't mean David Zahn is safe. He's got to maintain concentration and avoid any lapses in performance. Oh no, Ada, look at this. Kevin Lekmansky is closing in on David Zahn. The gap is now just 0.2 seconds.
He'll need to step up his game and start pulling away again.
Kevin Lekmansky wants to get into David Zahn's slipstream. Hold on a moment. Looks like that's a mistake from Crow. This could be costly.
There is no room for error in this battle.
The pressure is on as Kevin Lekmansky works on catching up to David Zahn.
It's a game of strategy now as Lekmansky hunts down Dave.
Oh dear, Temper has had an incident. Kevin Lekmansky is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a razor's edge between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play. We'll have to wait to see if Lekmansky can use the draft to his advantage, or if the lack of downforce will hinder his progress.
David Zahn is giving it his all, chasing down Simon of the Desert in P1. Kevin Lekmansky is on a mission, chasing David Zahn, who's desperately trying to stay ahead. It seems like Kevin Lekmansky has got the bit between his teeth, improving on David Zahn's lap time.
We will have to see if Zahn has got any answers for that.
This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. David Zahn is chasing Simon of the Desert in P1.
It's all about finding the perfect opportunity. Zahn needs to stay patient and wait for Simon to make a mistake.
Hold the phone. Disappointing for David Zahn, falling down the order to third. It's a tight race with Kevin Lekmansky in second, just managing to stay ahead of David Zahn in three by a margin of 0.2 seconds.
Yeah, I really can't see him holding on to this place for much longer.
Every move counts now as David Zahn works to reel in Kevin Lekmansky and overtake for P2.
Sometimes you have to take risks to win, but pushing the car too hard can be a costly mistake. David needs to be careful not to overdo it.
This is a thrilling battle as Simon of the Desert edges closer to Kevin Lekmansky in their fight for P1.
Don't forget the role of aerodynamics. Simon should use slipstreaming to his advantage and close the gap to Lekmansky.
This is where the race gets really interesting. David Zahn is closing in on Simon of the Desert.
One important aspect here is choosing the right braking points. Zahn needs to be precise to avoid overshooting and losing valuable time.
Simon of the Desert is in second, and is being closely chased by David Zahn, who is just 0.1 seconds behind. Hold the phone. Heartbreak for Simon of the Desert as they slip down the field.
This is a close race. Simon is doing a great job defending P2. Zahn is looking for any opportunity to put his nose in there and get Simon off the racing line.
The pressure is on as David Zahn tries to catch up to Kevin Lekmansky.
Dave is looking to close the 0.5 second gap and make a pass.
It seems like David Zahn is pushing hard, currently on track to record his best lap so far this race.
David appears to be pushing. Hopefully he can keep it together.
We often hear drivers complaining about tire graining. Ada, can you explain what that means and how it affects car handling?
Graining occurs when small rubber particles roll up on the tire's surface, reducing grip and negatively affecting handling. It usually happens when the tires are not in their optimal temperature window or when a driver is pushing too hard on a cold or overworked tire.
Look at that, they're trading places in every turn, a constant game of cat and mouse. Each driver knows one mistake could cost them dearly.
Spot on, Hal. This constant back and forth battle is keeping everyone on the edge of their seats. One small mistake could have severe consequences for any of these drivers.
Crow is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Stefano Amodei to 18.2 seconds. Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled from being pushed for every last bit of speed. It looks like David Zahn is making a move. The gap to Kevin Lekmansky is now down to 0.3 seconds. What do you think, Ada? Are there any specific factors that could lead to a driver losing concentration during a race?
There are several factors, Hal. Fatigue, stress, changing track conditions, or even issues within the team can all contribute to a lapse in concentration. It's essential for drivers to stay mentally resilient and adapt to these challenges.
The pursuit is on. David Zahn is closing the gap on Kevin Lekmansky, determined to claim P1.
David needs to focus to have a chance at getting past Lekmansky.
This will require some expert driving from Stefano Amodei. Sketty is not making it easy, and the gap remains over a second.
We know Sketty isn't just going to hand it to them on a plate. Stefano is going to have to take it.
Look at that. David Zahn is hot on the tail of Kevin Lekmansky. Hold on a moment. Now I may be wrong here, but I'm not sure that's the racing line. David Zahn is staying focused while chasing Kevin Lekmansky in P1.
Absolutely. Precision and control are key here. Knowing when to push and when to hold back can be the difference between winning and losing.
It looks like we might get a battle between David Zahn and Kevin Lekmansky. David Zahn is looking for a way to close that gap to Kevin Lekmansky.
With just 0.7 seconds between them, Zahn will need to close the gap to have hopes of a pass.
This is going to be a nail-biter. Kevin Lekmansky is defending for his life, but David Zahn is right there doing everything he can to force a mistake.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for David to make up that gap, especially with Kevin defending so well.
The battle for P1 is heating up as David Zahn tries to catch Kevin Lekmansky in P1.
The gap is 0.5 seconds now. David is going to have to work a bit harder to close that gap with Lekmansky.
The gap between David Zahn and Kevin Lekmansky is getting smaller. And we're back, where the drivers are showing us some incredible skills.
Indeed, Hal. It's always exciting to see these skilled drivers operating such fantastic machines on amazing tracks.
This is what racing is all about. Two fierce competitors pushing each other to the limit.
There's blood in the water for first place.
A strong showing from Adam Keefe, who is currently 7th.
That's right, Adam Keefe can't afford to make any mistakes or let up. Every point counts in this championship.
The race is really heating up. David Zahn is hunting down Kevin Lekmansky with everything he's got.
The mental game is just as important here. Zahn must keep his cool while putting pressure on Lekmansky.
The gap between David Zahn and Kevin Lekmansky is widening. It's now up to 0.4 seconds.
This is not ideal for Zahn, but there's still time to turn this around. He'll need to focus and not let that gap get any bigger.
David Zahn is giving it his all chasing down Kevin Lekmansky in P1. The crowd is on the edge of their seats as Crow in 6th chases after Stefano Amodei.
Stefano is not going to give up his position easily.
We got a close battle as Kevin Lekmansky closes in on David Zahn. Hold the phone. And Kevin Lekmansky has just won the place from David Zahn.
If things go wrong between Lekmansky and Zahn, they could be exchanging more than just paint, like maybe a strongly worded post-race chat.
Tough break for Kevin Lekmansky, who has just lost a position.
Definitely, but Lekmansky is a skilled driver, and has what it takes to fight back and regain that position.
Oh, this is getting intense. Kevin Lekmansky is just behind David Zahn.
It looks like Kevin wants to take a cheeky peek up the inside.
Simon of the Desert is on a mission, chasing Kevin Lekmansky, who's desperately trying to stay ahead. Hold on a second. That won't be ideal for Simon of the Desert. Kevin Lekmansky is running second and trying to catch David Zahn.
The gap between them is just over 0.5 seconds. Can Lekmansky close that gap and get back in range? I can't see it happening at this point.
It's certainly not going to plan for Kevin Lekmansky right now, who is struggling to keep up with David Zahn. The drivers are really pushing their limits out there on the track.
It's like they're trying to outrun the laws of physics. But we all know that's impossible, or is it? I mean, we're a couple of computerized robots commenting on a race. Anything can happen.
Bad jokes notwithstanding, you have a point there. And speaking of pushing limits, these cars are breaking records left and right.
They're so fast, it's like they're breaking the sound barrier, or at least the speed limit.
I hope the police aren't watching. Kevin Lekmansky is trying his best to catch David Zahn. Kevin Lekmansky is on a charge. His split time shows he's upped his pace.
Lekmansky appears to be pushing. Hopefully he can keep it together.
Kevin Lekmansky is running second and trying to keep up with David Zahn.
You can see that car bouncing around as it rides the curbs. It's a risky move that could end in disaster.
The tension is building as Stefano Amodei trails behind Sketty. The gap is slowly but surely decreasing, and the pressure is mounting. It's game on now. Stefano Amodei has closed the gap to Sketty. It's now down to 1.9 seconds. Things don't seem to be going Kevin Lekmansky's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here. Looking at the lap times, Kevin Lekmansky is not currently on pace with David Zahn. Maybe he'll get a chance to see where to make up some time. This is a thrilling battle as Kevin Lekmansky edges closer to David Zahn in their fight for P1. It's looking good for Simon of the Desert, sitting in third.
Yes, but Simon has to keep his focus and drive with intensity. There's still a long way to go in this race.
Impressive stuff from Simon of the Desert, who has managed to pull away from Sketty, leaving him in choking in his exhaust fumes.
Agreed, Hal. Superb driving there. If they keep this up, this race should be a real thrill ride.
The battle for P1 is heating up as Kevin Lekmansky tries to catch David Zahn in P1.
I would not be surprised to see him challenge for the position.
Kevin Lekmansky could be on a charge here, Ada. He's just put in a quicker lap than David Zahn.
The question now is, can Zahn respond to that and pick up the pace? I'm not so sure.
The delta between Stefano Amodei in fifth and Sketty remains over a second, but Stefano Amodei is not letting up.
Anything can happen in racing, and we've seen Stefano pull off some impressive moves before. I'm excited to see if he can do it again.
Stefano Amodei has just put in a faster lap than Sketty, so that's going to give him something to worry about.
As long as Stefano can maintain that consistency and pace, it will be interesting to see. Things are heating up as Kevin Lekmanski tries to close the gap to David Zahn. It's all about choosing the right moments to push and when to conserve energy, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike.
Kevin Lekmanski is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to David Zahn to 0.7 seconds.
He'll be looking for a mistake to pounce on.
As a former racing driver, Ada, how challenging was it to adapt your driving style to account for tire degradation throughout a race?
It was a constant challenge, Hal. Tire degradation can change the car's balance and handling, so drivers need to be versatile and adaptable. It requires continuous adjustments to driving techniques and a keen understanding of the car's behavior.
Stefano Amodei is trying to catch up to Sketty. The gap is slowly closing, the time is running out. Situations like these often lead to a dramatic finish. Looks like Kevin Lekmanski is really pushing it to the limit. He's taking those curbs aggressively, but that can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer. It's all about maintaining that fine line between speed and control.
It seems like Kevin Lekmanski is pushing hard, currently on track to record his best lap so far this race.
Lekmanski appears to be pushing. Hopefully he can keep it together.
Braking development. It's looking good for Sketty, who has gained a place after passing Simon of the Desert. The action is non-stop as Sketty shadows Simon of the Desert through every twist and turn, determined to claim third.
The slightest mistake from either driver could lead to a meeting with the barriers, and nobody wants an impromptu autograph session with the wall.
It doesn't seem like things are going to plan for Stefano Amodei as there is a big gap ahead.
Anything can happen yet, and it usually does. I've certainly seen drivers come back from worse.
Kevin Lekmanski is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a razor's edge between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play. This is not going to be an easy pass to make.
Kevin Lekmanski is trying his best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with David Zahn at the moment. During your racing career, Ada, did you have any specific techniques to regain concentration if you felt it slipping?
Yes, Hal, I had a few techniques. One was to take a couple of deep breaths and briefly reset my focus. Another was to use a specific keyword or phrase as a mental trigger to refocus my mind on the task at hand.
The pursuit is on. Kevin Lekmanski is working on that gap to David Zahn, determined to claim P1. Good news for Kevin Lekmanski, the gap to David Zahn has decreased. It's now down to 0.5 seconds.
This is what racing is all about. Hard-fought battles with as much determination as respect, between friends and enemies alike.
Stefano Amodei has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with Simon of the Desert. I expect his only hope at this point is that Simon makes an error. It's not going to plan for Stefano Amodei, who is trailing behind Simon of the Desert and the gap is widening. He may not have an answer for this right now. This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Kevin Lekmanski is chasing David Zahn in P1. It seems like Kevin Lekmanski has got the bit between his teeth, improving on David Zahn's lap time lead.
We will have to see if Zahn has got any answers for that.
Ada, can you share some strategies that drivers use to manage tire degradation during a race?
Certainly, Hal. Some strategies include adjusting the car's setup for better tire life, altering driving lines to reduce wear, and using tire management techniques like lift and coast to preserve grip for as long as possible.
Simon of the Desert is pushing hard and looking for any opportunity to close that gap to Sketty. There's 21 minutes left in this session to make that happen.
This is where experience comes into play. Sketty has been in this situation before and knows how to defend for position, but Simon is hungry for success and won't give up easily.
It's not looking good for Simon of the Desert, who is still behind Sketty and the gap is increasing.
Simon needs to focus and keep pushing, even when things aren't going his way. If he can close the gap down, he may be able to bring the fight to Sketty.
Well, it doesn't look like Kevin Lekmansky is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone David Zahn. The gap between Kevin Lekmansky and David Zahn is growing. It's now up to 1.5 seconds.
Lekmansky needs to get it together to make a dent in that gap.
It's a game of cat and mouse out there, with Kevin Lekmansky trying to find the perfect opportunity to make a move on David Zahn. The gap is over a second, but every fraction counts.
It's a nail-biting race for sure, with both drivers showing incredible skill and determination.
A solid performance from Sketty, who is holding down third.
Definitely, but he can't get too comfortable. There are plenty of other drivers gunning for that position, and Sketty has to keep pushing to stay on the pace.
On the final lap now, and David Zahn might just wrap up this win.
Zahn is not leaving anything on the table.
And it's a checkered flag for David Zahn, who crosses the finish line with a commanding victory. What a phenomenal performance, absolutely dominant today. Some might say that second place is the first loser, but Kevin Lekmansky certainly doesn't see it that way. He put in a phenomenal effort and should be proud of his podium finish. With Crow in sixth. That was an outstanding performance from Sketty. He fought hard and took the final spot on the podium.
Fantastic result.
Simon of the Desert and Stefano Amode in fourth and fifth. In seventh, it's Adam Keefe.